if you can paint the picture of the future lawyer, the lawyer that's operating in the true 21st century sense with data and technology and generative AI, what does that lawyer look like? What are their core competencies?
There is a hybridity that's happening when it comes to human intelligence and machine intelligence. And I think lawyers should start thinking more in terms of code. And that's a really interesting point too, because code itself is starting to be more natural language based. So you don't actually have to learn how to code per se, or you may not have to in the future. But I think, again, talking about, the point of speaking a common language, we should find a way to speak the language of machines so that we can work with them more effectively.
What would you say is maybe the current state, and this could be a broad question, but the current state of innovation in large law firms today, and where does it need to be if you think about the industry as a whole?
This year is the year I think law firms are realizing it is real. And so the question is, well, what do we do now?
I'm Kevin with Centauri. I'm here with Ilona Logvinova from Cleary Gottlieb. Ilona is the Director of Practice Innovation at Cleary. And very excited to have you on the show, Ilona. We've been talking about this for a while. This is great to be doing this.
Yeah.
So, going to kick things off. We'd love to hear your superhero origin story. So you are a well-known name in legal innovation at this point, and have, I think, inspired a lot of people about the possibilities that are being uncovered in this space. We'd love to hear, how did you end up doing this type of work? What led you to being in the seat you're in now?
Yeah, so I'm super humbled by that. I would say it's the love of the craft, honestly. So if we think about innovation as a sport, I really do practice a sort of athleticism and like an athletic mindset. I would think when I think about it, when I dig into it, right? There's not really a way to win on your own in this game. This is something that's a collective exercise. There are no straight answers at this point. We're kind of charting through white space, right? We're doing a lot of structuring, a lot of thinking, a lot of systems thinking and architecting. And it's an exercise of future trend forecasting, understanding what's here and what's now, understanding capabilities that are around us. And this is interesting to me because I was a philosophy major undergrad. I love philosophy. I'm a philosophy nerd. I can dig into sort of the abstract space, pretty heavily. And I went to law school, like many of us do, and tried to find some answers. In law school, it was a lot of abstract kind of deductive and inductive reasoning, right? So you parse through arguments, you get through it. You then work at the corporate law firm, right? I was an associate at Fried Frank for a number of years. I was doing debt finance as an associate. And from there, I really was intrigued by tech. And this was around 2018 where AI wasn't really a household name yet. And you were really kind of doing more of the transactional, typical work as an associate. And so I thought tech was really pretty cool. So I went in-house, I went to MasterCard, and I was part of the enterprise partnerships team, which meant that we were thinking about how to leverage what we had, but with new partnerships, right? And build new things and explore new opportunities. And that's where I really started to see kind of more of the tech side of businesses and how things were emerging, the power that AI was starting to play, because this was still sort of earlier days. And I was really intrigued by what AI was and what it was doing. And so then when the McKinsey opportunity came up to be part of their technology team, I just jumped on it. And I said, this is the tip of the spear. This is where so much of the leading edge, cutting edge tech is being built and delivered. And many people don't know this. A lot of people think that McKinsey, focuses on PowerPoint delivery and corporate strategy, but it goes so far beyond that. It's really a highly sophisticated tip of the spear technology organization delivering really sophisticated, complicated code to address problem statements across industries, across regions. And I got to be a lawyer for the data scientists and the people who were doing that work, which was enormously cool. But in doing that, right, because my clients were so innovative, my team, the legal team that I was a part of, servicing the technology part of the organization, we had to run pretty fast and we had to be pretty innovative in the way that we worked and the way that we practiced. We couldn't just be reactive. We had to think about, what are the issues that are coming up around the corner? What are the risks that our teams could fall into that aren't here now, but could be here 2 months from now, 6 months from now, right? And so we had to just really kind of innovate the way that we practiced. And that around that time, this was around 2020, 2021, this was where legal innovation was then becoming more of a term in the vernacular. And I said, this is pretty cool. I started watching its rise. And then as this was happening, I was working with our general counsel, Pierre Gentine at McKinsey, who is truly a visionary leader. And he was very supportive of innovation and the effort to, dive into and really progress professionalism and passion across our entire legal organization. And so he gave me this opportunity to lead innovation for the in-house legal function. And that's where I really started leaning into what is legal innovation? How can we transform the way that we work? How can we embed new capabilities and new, processes and workflows into the way that we do pretty much anything, right? How can we embed design thinking into problem solving? How do we think about things in new ways? And so that's where it sort of started for me on the legal innovation front. And I was thinking about it, I was writing about it, I was talking about it, and just trying to push the conversation forward. And now in my current role, which is at Cleary, leading innovation across practices across the firm, it's just continuing that exciting theme of, figuring out how do we augment and accelerate everything that we do? How do we go on this innovation transformation journey as a law firm? And how do we figure that out?
That's really interesting. And I think you made a comment there about McKinsey being on that bleeding edge, and now Cleary being on that bleeding edge as well. Just how do you think about sort of the offensive versus the defensive on the embrace of innovation at these organizations? And going back even to your time at MasterCard, have you seen sort of is there a profile of an organization that is thinking proactively about this rather than defensively? I'm curious what that looks like.
I love this question. I have so many thoughts on that. I think, so it's interesting. I have two perspectives on this that can run hand in hand. I think leadership really matters. So if leadership with an organization, whether it's the general counsel, right? I'm talking specifically about legal innovation. If it's the general counsel or the management team, right? Or at a law firm, it's the CIO or the COO or the managing partner, right? Or the C-suite more generally. If the drive for innovation and transformation is there and enabling the firm to be future-proof, then you can hire the right people. You can really, you can create the budget for it. You can create the momentum for it. There is a behavioral science and a change management aspect to it. So it doesn't happen overnight. And whoever comes into those roles, it's not just one role in an organization, right? That person needs to be an evangelist. They need to prove the concept. They need to really set the strategy and then figure out how to both convince and empower people within that organization to go on that journey with them. Because if you can't do that, then you can't really affect the transformation, right? You can bring in innovation, but it won't transform. It'll just sort of sit there. So I think leadership really matters, leadership, sponsorship, and drive. But then I think, a lot of what we're seeing now is that it can be a distributed effort. You sometimes see really interested, lawyers or associates or partners who kind of go solo and they introduce innovation into an organization and they get people excited. And it's more of a grassroots effort that then takes off, and it might be more siloed. So maybe it's more team specific or group specific. And it doesn't take charge of the organization holistically, but you start to see it being embedded into the way that the organization works.
That's very cool. So it's having that person or group of people who are like, come with me to the future. Like we're going to do this together and it's going to be fun. What would you say is maybe the current state, and this could be a broad question, but the current state of innovation in large law firms today, and where does it need to be if you think about the industry as a whole?
Yeah, it really varies. I think various organizations are approaching it differently. I think last year was the year of Gen AI, is this real? Is this hype or is this real? And law firms were thinking about it. We were talking about it. There was a lot of industry dialogue. This year is the year I think law firms are realizing it is real. And so the question is, well, what do we do now? And so, is it build, buy, or partner? Is it grow your data science teams? Is it grow your capabilities? Do we teach our summer associates how to prompt engineer, right? How do we upskill and how do we think about the effort more holistically? What I think is critical to get this right is to think about innovation and the transformation journey as a holistic exercise. It's not just about the legal technology. It's about the broader strategy of the organization. Where are you as a law firm hoping to go? What's your business strategy? What are your business drivers? How do you think about your data driving towards that goal? And then how do you think about your data and how can it be augmented and accelerated, and how can your workflows be impacted by legal technologies? Adjacent to that, how do you upskill your people, right? How do you teach your summer classes, your associates, your partners? How do you upskill them to be prompt engineers, to think about working alongside technologies, right, as their right-hand tool and supervising it correctly? How do you train associates where associates can be trained now without doing the rote skills that I was trained on at 2 or 3 in the morning, right? And what does that training and development look like? We have to now create those curriculums and build them so that we can effectively teach a new generation of lawyers, right? And refresh the skill sets of more seasoned lawyers. There's a pricing component to it. How do you define value capture? How, I'm not kind of digging into is the billable hour dead conversation. I don't think it is. I think it's a measure of time. But the question is it a measure of value? And, how do you define value capture if it's not 6-minute increments in the billable hour? Because there are efficiencies. But those efficiencies that you gain by using certain highly specific and tailored technologies can mean that the output is then that much more sophisticated. And that's a greater representation of value, right? Even though it might take a little bit less time. So figuring out all of those pieces of the equation and then moving that forward, I think the law firms who have the competitive advantage and will continue to have it will be thinking about all of those things.
So you recently started your role at Cleary Gottlieb. Can you tell us a bit about the firm? What's the sort of the firm's identity and presence in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think embedded in that question too is innovation, right? So it's really interesting because I was brought in. This is a newly created role, and we're seeing innovation roles that are starting to pop up across law firms. But Cleary is really focused on this right now. And, historically, it's a firm that really tackles the complex problems. It's not just about, volume and being focused on volume that's repetitive. It's really focused on how do we get it right for our clients, right? How do we take, again, going back to client centricity, how do we take a client-centric approach to the work that we're delivering and the work that we're doing? And how do we really reach that standard of excellence and solve in a nuanced way the hardest problems, right? Thinking about innovation, our managing partner and our leadership team and our lawyers are really focused on embedding innovation into the way that we work. And that's why this role was so exciting to me, because I really saw both the momentum and the sponsorship for driving towards an innovation transformation journey, building off of the phenomenal innovation that's already there now. So Cleary is one of the few firms that developed something like Cleary X, which is essentially an autonomous organization that works with legal technologies and works with enablement for clients and works directly with clients. And it was developed well ahead of its time in 2018, right? And it has a CEO who's fantastic, Carla Swansberg, and she and I, have a collaboration where we're thinking about things, but they are independently client serving. And so that is really ahead of its game in terms of how Cleary was thinking about innovation and the drive towards something new and something different, and not just solving problems and working with clients and client service today, but really how do we move forward? How do we set up for the future and not just make ourselves future proof, right? But set up a level of future readiness. What I'm really excited about right now is going on this journey and figuring out how to build us up so that we empower our lawyers with technologies, that we build up capabilities, right? That we think about new ways of working and new ways of collaborating. And just, really think about delivery and client service across technology, across process, and make it better for our clients, but also find a better way of working on the legal side and a better way of learning and, focusing on innovation holistically.
That's really interesting because you're talking about the sort of that value capture piece. So maybe a related question is, for a law firm that's doing everything right, given the state of the technology today, what is the art of the possible here for firms? Yeah. If they have carte blanche to go purchase whatever solutions and develop a strategy from first principles, from where you sit, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's an exercise in understanding which practices are the priority practices. And so with those practices, finding the tools that don't just accelerate. I think acceleration is a feature of technologies and the capabilities that they bring, but really augment and enhance what they're doing. So, for example, in terms of what you guys are doing at Centauri, data extraction, right? That matters for the corporate side of the house. And so how does the corporate side of the house then embed that into their workflows? Two pieces to that. You can find the tech, right, and get the right tech, but you also have to make sure that your lawyers are then using it effectively and learning how to use it and, referencing it rather than extracting that data manually. And I think that that's a tactical example, but that analysis runs across the legal services organization. So finding the tool that really augments the capabilities of these different practices. And then thinking about deliverables. This is something I think about a lot. So it's a human-centered design point, right? Thinking about client centricity and putting the client at the center of the experience. Does the client want the memo? Do they want to read the memo, or would they prefer something that leverages a data visualization, for example, right? So rethinking about both the way that we're working and also the way that we're delivering our work product to clients, because you can inject tooling on both sides of that. But in terms of a design approach, right, a design-driven, client-centric approach, thinking about how people want to receive information is something that I'm really focused on. And I think that experientially can be meaningfully enhanced with technologies that we have now, but not just technologies, with people, process, and technology sort of thinking about it at the same time.
That's great. And I think maybe the data piece that you mentioned there might be part of that, right? If clients want to see more data from their firms, or data-driven decision-making is something we talk about a lot at Centauri. But I'm very interested in that delivery of information to clients. Are you seeing coming from the world of management consulting at McKinsey to the world of law firms? Obviously, these have for most of history been very different food groups. Law firms deliver information to their clients in the form of memos and emails, and at a place like McKinsey, much more in the form of like decks and charts. So curious if you see any transformation that's happening in the practice of law. Do you see that? Is that a potential future of legal practice where firms operate in a similar mode of delivery to clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about this a lot, actually. I think the transformation is not necessarily happening in name, but in practice. And what I mean by that is it's happening in parallel. So clients are becoming and calling themselves data-driven organizations. We saw this trend about 10 years ago where most companies became technology companies. And then from there, I think we saw that most companies evolved into data companies. So if those are our clients, we similarly as law firms, right? Historically, we would think about agreements as terms that were negotiated and agreed upon. But now agreements are essentially places where data is stored, right? If you think about a credit agreement, it has a significant number of pages, first of all. It's over 100 pages long, right? But it also has a meaningful number of data points within it, right? Trigger events, reps and warranties, you name it, basket sizes. You need to find a way to capture that data and deliver advice to clients based on that data. And maybe it can be essentially datafied in many ways. So I guess with both sides, the vision that comes to mind for me, if one, the client, is a data company, and the other, the law firm, is a data-driven organization that essentially has all this data available and is informed by data in the way that we work, then we are speaking the language of data together, even if we're not calling it that in name.
Right. That's very interesting. So having that shared understanding, like this
Exactly.
This is the
heart of the matter. Yeah.
The lingua franca of business is data.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
So I guess from there, I mean, if you can paint the picture of the future lawyer, the lawyer that's operating in the true 21st century sense with data and technology and generative AI, what does that lawyer look like? What are their core competencies? And maybe this is an interesting question for folks who are watching, who are in law school right now and thinking about what is the career going to entail in the future with this new paradigm. I think that's an interesting question to explore.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And I think the answer differs whether we're talking about the future lawyer. The future is now, right? The future lawyer 6 months from now, or the future lawyer 2 years or 5 years from now. But it's not a change so much as it is an evolution. So if we're thinking about the future lawyer 6 months from now, I would say it's a lawyer that has a sense of capabilities at their fingertips, right? So now a lot of the tools that are available are essentially web apps. And I think having something be available that feels behaviorally native to a lawyer is really important. So don't take people out of their workspaces, meet people where they are as vendors, right? As capabilities and tools. So people are used to working in Word, they're used to working in Outlook, right? They have their web pages open with a number of tabs. Those tabs will now start to become legal technologies. And people should understand and be able to work with that set of tabs and go in between those tabs and essentially, use the search, the data extraction, the redlining, all of these enhanced capabilities that give automation potential, but also really enhance how you're working. I think the lawyer 2 or so years from now, maybe even less than that, maybe a bit more than that, I think there is a hybridity that's happening when it comes to human intelligence and machine intelligence. And I think we are essentially, it's not quite the singularity, right? But it's a way of working alongside AI, alongside machines and other emerging technologies that are coming to the fore that really is enhanced. One enhances the other. So the human enhances the technologies through training data and through, enabling technologies to learn. And the technology enhances the human learning and practice and experience, right, and delivery. And so how do we work alongside and deliver with technology? That's the hybridity point and interesting question for me. And I think lawyers should start thinking more in terms of code. And that's a really interesting point too, because code itself is starting to be more natural language based. So you don't actually have to learn how to code per se, or you may not have to in the future. But I think, again, talking about, the point of speaking a common language, we should find a way to speak the language of machines so that we can work with them more effectively. And that means prompt engineering, because that's how you ask them questions and, receive the right responses, but also natural language-based coding. So asking questions and understanding how to instruct machines in a way.
Very interesting. So having that, your AI assistant with you in many different ways. So we've been talking about the future lawyer and what this technology could look like in a law firm setting. Something we've been hearing a lot about, I think folks have been hearing a lot about, is agentification and AI agents. So we'd love to flesh that out a bit. So what is the Isaac Asimov version of this? What is an AI agent exactly? Can you help unpack that for folks who are, trying to make sense of that?
This is such an interesting question. And I think if I think about an agent, this is so rudimentary, but maybe this will resonate with listeners. I think about it as like a little tiny Smurf that is like a first year associate. And, kind of like, I I heard this analogy yesterday at a conference, and I hope I'm not being disrespectful, but it just made so much sense to me. It was something around, an agent, or essentially like these technologies, are first year associates who are homeschooled essentially through high school. And so now they're kind of like coming into the world for the first time, right? And they're first year associates, or they're in college. But the point is there is an adaptation period that needs to happen, right? And there may be an adaptation gap, but the knowledge and the awareness of process is there. And I think that's where agents are really shining through right now, and we're starting to see their potential, because they can really learn a singular task and follow it through and be pretty impressive in terms of achieving accuracy and nuance if trained the right way within that task. But there is an adaptation gap in terms of certain behavioral norms, right? Certain things that humans can do and are aware of because of their experiential density, because of their awareness, because of their experience with the broader world, right?
Right.
That fills that gap. But I think that's great. I think if we can find efficiencies and, again, sort of hybridize intelligence with those agents, and we can identify the use cases to plug those agents into, that is a huge win. And something that I'm focused on right now is really understanding, number one, how nuanced can these agents get? Number two, how specifically can I verticalize the use cases for these agents where I can plug them in and really assist attorney workflows? And this is the part of the job that I love the most. I get to sit with lawyers. I get to really understand their pain points and their problems and their, where they see an opportunity for greater efficiency. And I get to essentially blueprint and design with them what it could look like to fill that. Right. And I think agents can be an answer to that. I think other technologies can be an answer to that too.
And maybe what are some examples of workflows or use cases that agents are well set up for today with the state of the technology today? Have you seen any examples where it's like that's an obvious application of it?
I think what we're starting to see is the drafting use case, right? So where agents come into play and facilitate drafting or get drafting right with greater accuracy than the non-agentic approach, right? And I think we're seeing that other law firms are doing that. We saw David Wang's announcement, right? He's doing great work with that. I think you and your organization, you guys are starting to get into that. I've seen, other players are using agents in different ways too. But that's one legal specific use case that has come up for me recently. And there are a number of other uses, I think, where it could be really interesting. I think knowledge retrieval is another one, right?
Right. Yep.
Approaching systems, approaching ways of aggregating information, right? Structure and suggested structure to various deal flows. That could be interesting.
So something we hear from firms a lot as we speak with innovation leaders is there's a lot of, technologies are shifting so quickly. We're talking about AI agents now. We weren't even talking about AI agents, 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So with so many new things coming onto the scene, what do you think about as the concrete things that a firm can do today? If they were to say 3 action items that they can take now to prepare themselves for success in this rapidly changing environment. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what those might be.
Yeah, so I'm going to use a metaphor here, and I'm going to use the metaphor of a wedding diet, right? So if you're getting married and you want to, shed a few or shed a lot, whatever it is you want, don't set yourself up for a situation where you're crash dieting, right? A month before your wedding or a few weeks before. Really think about it ahead of time. Get the personal trainer, right? Get the Soul Cycle or Peloton, go for a run, join a pickleball club, but start the strategy early, start it a year in advance, get the readiness intact. And the analog there is law firms should be thinking about their foundational architectures and systems and processes, right? They should be thinking about the move to the cloud if they're not there already. They should be thinking about their data lakes and their data organization and their data readiness. The technologies are shifting quickly, right? Think of the technologies like wedding dresses. You can try on a whole lot of them if you're already in the shape you want to be in, right? But otherwise, you'd have to modify, you'd have to do a lot of things, you'd have to crash diet. It's no fun. Do it early and do it right, and then don't fall into tech debt. Don't fall into regulatory debt, right? Set up the right governance systems. Set up your AI governance structures, your policies, your ways of thinking about it, right? How to pressure test more risky technologies and get your organization on the right track. I think the organizations that set themselves up from a technology, from a process, right, from a governance perspective, from a people perspective, in terms of enabling their people and their talent to work with technologies, those are the shops where you'll be able to bring in new technologies, no matter what that technology is or how far advanced in its versioning it is, and really set it up for success.
So then the follow-up question to that, a firm says, great, if only we can do that, but there's all these risks. We want to do all that.
Course, yeah.
It sounds great. We want to, embrace it. We want to build our data lake. We want to have, all these infrastructures and, all this infrastructure in place, but there's all these risks we have to jump through. How do you think about those risks? How do you navigate those as a firm so that you can be leaning into that future while being mindful of the constraints?
In the words of Spider-Man, with great strength comes great responsibility, right? So I think if you can move so quickly and efficiently and, interestingly with AI, then you've got to do the groundwork to get it right. And in my mind and in my experience, that's really a collaborative exercise. So you're working very closely with your InfoSec team. You're working with your risk team, your GC's office, right? You're setting up the foundation so that you can then move faster and you've got your organization. It's not a one-person exercise. It's really a cross-functional undertaking that will take some time. And it will also take buy-in from clients. So clients have to be okay with the move to the cloud, right? The use of data when it comes to Gen AI, the use of data when it comes to other sorts of technologies. But I think transparency and explainability is the name of the game. If clients understand the why and the value proposition of doing all of these things, right? Cloud means better cybersecurity, more efficiency when it comes to using AI, easier storage of your data, faster access, all of these different things. understanding the why and explaining that and making sure that there's governance around that, I think sets up for better success in implementation.
That's really interesting. I love that cloud comment that, cloud equals stronger data security because of the state of the art of that technology today.
Exactly.
And that's a great point. And maybe there are many analogs. And I think this might be a great time to ask, beyond legal tech, beyond generative AI for legal profession, what are other technologies that you're keeping an eye on? And what else is in your purview right now?
Yeah, I think the emergence of AI is really interesting to me from a convergence perspective. What does it mean in terms of the convergence of AI with other technologies that we see emerging now, and they're here, but they're not quite ready yet? So for me, it's quantum computing, right? It's faster processing speeds, doing everything just so much faster than we're already doing it now. AR, VR is enormously interesting. And we see it with Apple, right? The Apple Vision Pro. It's a bit clunky right now in the sense, it hurts my nose to wear. Maybe that's just me.
I did the demo. I was like, this is.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, but it's not going to be that way for long. That friction, it's like if you think about the computer in the 1980s, right? And 1984 when the Apple computer came out. And now all these years later, we have essentially, our computer and our phone. Yep. It's not going to take that long at this point. But that tech will get much smaller and easier to use, and it's going to essentially become a wearable for us. And so what does that mean in terms of the way that we work, collaborate, communicate, interact? I think that'll have enormous impact on what our workspaces look like, right? What our interactions look like, what connectivity and productivity look like. And then we can really get into the interesting questions of AI will be powering all of that, and agents will be part of AI, and maybe other technologies will be too. And governance, right? Maybe we'll have blockchain-driven governance because we'll have more sort of distributed opportunities. But all of these different technologies, I think, will start converging more than they are now. Web3 is no exception. I think Web3, which is metaverse, right? Enormously interesting because it's really an opportunity to build your own architecture. So if we think about Web 1.0, it was essentially when the internet was given to us. We received it. It was just, AOL, and we were advertised to, we received it, we went on web pages, right? Then Web 2.0 was the social media internet, right? Where we could communicate with each other. It was algorithm powered. We got recommendations, we got likes, and we interacted with our friends and with other networks and broader social networks. Web3 is where we can essentially create our own type of way of interacting and behaving and existing in a digital space. So if you think about that, if you think about the power to create your own digital space, the ability through AR, VR to move across digital and physical realms more readily, right? Incredibly fast processing speed. So you could basically do any number of things in a matter of, short seconds. And then all of that is powered by AI. That's incredibly powerful.
That's super cool. That's the what's it called? The singularity that we're
the lawyer singularity.
The lawyer singularity. Yes, when we go attend the conferences from our Vision Pros. Very interesting. So maybe a question then. So obviously you've had a super interesting career. I think when people go to law school, they were thinking about the different possibilities from there and what their practice might look like, and it ends up very rarely is it the practice that they expected it to be on the first day of 1L. And your career is a prime example of that. Do you have any advice for either law students today or people who might be thinking of going to law school and entering this career path? Advice for them on if they want a career like yours that's this dynamic. What are some things they can do to prepare themselves for that?
There's this phrase at McKinsey that's sort of a guiding mantra, and I really love it, and I've adopted it. It's make your own McKinsey. And the idea is you can make your experience at the organization what you'd really hope for it to be if you really try and you invest in it, right? And the other opportunities are there. But the idea is that you can build something that may not be there, obviously, in the first instance, right? Or may not be part of your job description. I think the name of the game right now for young talent rising up is we don't know yet what the jobs of the future will look like. We don't know what they'll be called. We don't know where they'll be, right? We don't know if they'll be on land, at sea or in space. We have no idea. And so I think the ability to make your own something, the mantra that you can and ought to build not just things, but your career, and learn things, constantly learn, stay agile. If you're not learning, you're not growing. And I think you may not be effectively doing. So just keeping all of that in mind, right? I think never take a job description for what it is. I think there are so many jobs out there that are not written, right? Some organizations don't know what they need. And so find a way to really understand something and make it your own and be able to critically think within that space. And that itself is a huge value add.
So basically a high agency approach to your career.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
You're saying, I'm going to take charge of it and create my path instead of have my path be dictated to me by someone else.
Yeah.
That's really resonates on so many levels. So, Ilona, this has been a wonderful conversation. Absolutely.
So fun. Yeah.
Always, super enriching, and I've really enjoyed it. I think I'd like to end things with a lightning round.
Yes, I love lightning rounds.
So lightning rounds are great. So shifting gears away from legal tech and AI into the more personal. So we'd love to hear, number one, is there a reading, a learning, or experience that's transformed your thinking recently? Something you've read, something you've done that sort of shifted how you view the world?
This is not recent, but I can't stop thinking about this. I think a lot about how fiction and authors and artists generally sort of tend to predict our world better than the people who are actually living and practicing whatever their daily toils are, right? I think because it takes so much imagination to think about where we are right now and where we're headed, it's the artists who can sort of sink into that the most. And I've been thinking a lot about the movie Her, which came out in about 2015 or 2016 with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, right? And ScarJo is the voice of the AI, right? She's the one that he falls in love with. She's the robot that he sort of, develops feelings for in that movie. And it was such a futuristic idea at the time, but it's not anymore. We talk to our phones all the time. We talk to technology all the time. We know that technology can really respond and emote in some ways, right? And elicit responses that are emotive from humans. And I think the voice of ScarJo is very similar to the voice of OpenAI, which we've all, of ChatGPT, which we've seen in the news.
May not actually be.
Yeah, right, exactly. And we've sort of seen this, but I think there's something that gets embedded in us, that is imprinted in us from art that we experience, that is just a driver of how we think. And so I think about that a lot in terms of a lot of the art that we're consuming now, both from, a reader and consumer and for the artists out there. I just urge you to create and to write, because I think it can really progress innovation.
I love that. Also, can we talk about ScarJo's just total, the breadth of her repertoire, from Lost in Translation to Marvel movies to...
Oh my God, I couldn't agree more. Yes.
Favorite ScarJo movie?
Definitely Lost in Translation. I mean,
good,
that was
good
just
answer.
such it was an oldie but goodie. Yeah. So good.
Although I did learn that she was, I think 17 at the time of the movie, which is a surprising little factoid. Really surprising for people who've seen the movie. So more questions here. Favorite travel destination?
Paris. I mean, that's so easy. I go every chance I get. I'm so lucky that Cleary has a Paris office. So,
that's fantastic. And you're based in New York, right?
Based in New York.
So
yeah.
That's
it's
not
a quick short flight. Just a few, 6-7 hours. Yeah.
Amazing. So going to wrap things up with a this or that. So this is going to be a quick one. So vacation or staycation?
Vacation.
Here's one. Passenger or driver?
Oh, driver for sure. Yeah.
Driver, even as a New Yorker. That's surprising.
Driver, but like figuratively, And I really internalize the Volvo commercial in life. There are passengers and there are drivers, and I just
the metaphorical driver.
The metaphor, exactly. That's great. But in real life, a passenger. Always.
Okay, that's more what I would expect for a New Yorker. Okay.
Yeah.
So cruise or camping?
Ooh, glamping for sure.
That wasn't an option.
I know. I'm just gonna intermediate that in there.
That's great. How about train or airplane?
Airplane, except carve out if the train has a glass roof and it's one of those wonderfully romantic, Switzerland trains or something like that. I'll choose the train.
That sounds good. That's back to the European theme. And last one for you. Bring it back to technology. PC or Mac?
Oh my God, Mac. Yeah. I mean, stay blue. Stay blue.
Oh yeah, blue bubbles only. That's great. Well, Ilona, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Really fun. And thanks everyone for listening in.